What's up guys, it's Bummy. I'm going to be doing how to make a tech house track in 2026. This is going to be a full track breakdown of my new track, Disco, that I dropped last Friday. And it already has track support from Propa and some of the other Hood Politics guys. To start, I'm just going to play the track out so you guys can hear what I'm talking about and kind of get a feel for the track I'm going to be going over.
I just want to feel the bass.
Let's do it. So for starting a track, I always try and start with vocals. I feel like it's a lot easier to start with a vocal and kind of build your track out around the vocal and the vibe of that vocal, rather than building a track out and then trying to find a vocal that fits it. Just because it's kind of hard to find good vocals nowadays for house, unless you're working like with a vocalist, which most people aren't. So if you can start with a vocal that you like and build the track out around that, it's just been a lot easier in terms of like workflow and actually getting an idea done. At least that's what I found. Maybe other people like to build it out, but I feel like that's what I've recommended people and it's worked in the past. To start, I wanted to find something more melodic and kind of like techno and almost has that like warehouse vibe. That's why I chose this vocal.
I just want to feel the bass. I just want to see the lights. I just want to be at the disco. Everybody wants to go to the disco. Disco.
And it also has like multiple phrases, as you can hear. That's like the full phrase out. I would try and find stuff like with multiple phrases like that, just because it's easier to cut that up and manipulate and add variation throughout your track, which is what you want to do. You want to be able to like change up the phrasing, just add variation, because that's going to be better for the listener and it's going to just help your track sound a little bit better. You don't want to hear the same phrase over and over. So that's usually what I look for, is just figuring out the vibe you want and then make sure it has like multiple phrases if possible that you can cut up. After you find like the vocal and figure out the direction you want to go with the track, I usually try and figure out like the synth lead or like melody I'm going to use. That's kind of going to be the unique sound or like sonic identity of the track. So like what I mean with that is I feel like a lot of tracks have a distinct like sound or melody that you think of whenever you think of the track. Think of like why Avicii is so famous. Like you can sing out all the melodies of all his tracks, and like those big tracks have that specific sound. That's what you think about for the track. So like once you figure out the vocal and you have that vibe you want to go for, that's usually when I sit through and I think of like a lead or a melody I want, and I'm trying to figure out like the vibe I want. So for this one, it was the original vocal I had is that darker, almost like techno-y style vocal. So I want to match that with the synth or the lead that I want. So that's kind of when you like sit through Serum presets and you scroll through and you figure out, okay, this is like the vibe I want, this is the sound I want, and then you kind of manipulate it and create your own thing. For the sonic identity or like the unique sound for this track, I started with this, which is like my lead call and response. Really like techno, it has that like deep gritty sound. It's a response. And I feel like that's kind of like what you think about when you hear my full track out. It's introduced in this first breakdown here.
I just want to feel the bass.
This, yeah, it's like the vocals and that synth are kind of the talking points of the track. And then following, once I had that first lead, I wanted to figure out the second drop synth, because a lot of times for my drop 2, I like to add something on top of like the main sound, just to make it a bit heavier. So for that one, I had, like you guys heard in the beginning when I played this second drop out, is that more like odd mobby style, almost like dubstep inspired new tech house style bass synth like this. And then followed by the original. So once you kind of start out with those unique sounds, it's a lot easier to figure out the creative direction of your track. And that's why I usually recommend that. So after I have that figured out, I usually start with the kick and the bass. For a lot of the modern tech house and like most genres, there's gonna be 3 parts here. Your like low end or your kick and your bass. So it's gonna be like your top bass, your sub, and then the kick. So together mine for this one sounds like this. It's super simple. It's like kind of that modern offbeat style bass you hear in a lot of the tech house stuff today. A little bit of like automation there, some variation here. Also, this was a MIDI and I just bounced it whenever I master my track, but it's the same exact MIDI as this sub here. But I feel like this modern offbeat style bass is really common for this style of tech house now because it's very driving and it doesn't take up too much space in your mix, I feel like, or it can if you want it to. But a lot of times in this modern tech house stuff, the vocals and the synths on the drop are gonna be doing a lot of the talking. Like in this one, like my synths are very prominent. So you don't want the bass line to be taking up a lot of that mid and high space and moving around a lot, taking the listener's ear away from your synths and like what you want them to hear on the drop. That's kind of what I was talking about with like being intentional, is like you don't want to overcrowd your mix and what you want people to hear. So choosing that offbeat style bass is why I chose this, because it's not too crazy, but it's very driving and it sounds good. So for this one, yeah, it's the same MIDI here and then the sub under that. For this one, for my mid bass, I'll always start it on 90 hertz, and for the sub, I'll just do the same thing where I cut it under 90 hertz. And then for the kick, have it here super normal. Just find a kick that matches your genre. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Just make sure it sounds good, it doesn't sound distorted, and it matches your genre. Like you don't want a techno kick and a house song and vice versa. So just make sure you figure that out, whether you're looking through like fly samples or sample packs or whatever. And a lot of times you want to find a kick that's loud, because your kick is going to be the loudest thing in your mix. Basically, whenever it should be the loudest thing in your mix. So if you can find a kick that's pretty loud, I'll show you guys what I do. So I open Span, it's a free plugin. Pull it up here, change this to high res, and then solo the kick, and hear how loud you can have the dBs. So the peak dB on here at like the bass frequency is gonna be about 24 dB. So whenever you do that, like you want to find a kick that's a bit louder, because you don't want to have to squash it whenever you're mastering your mix and you're raising the volume of everything. And it's a lot easier to do that when you have a kick that's already really loud in that bass frequency. So once you have all the low end figured out, you just want to go through and add some automation variation in the bass. So for here, you can kind of hear it. What most people do now, especially with the offbeat bass, is you'll just automate the cutoff frequency on your serum. You won't be able to see it on this track because I already bounced it, so it's just the audio file, not the MIDI. But I'll just show you how to do it on the sub. It's the same thing. I have the same MIDI file. So you would open up your serum. I'll drag it in here. And then you would go on your filter for the sub. It was off. I turned it on to make this, but you just have the cutoff here. And then you'll just click on that, go to your automation there, click the automation button, and then it should say filter one frequency. So once you have that, you'll just want to, you can just drag this, and that's going to be the sound of it like opening up. You can hear more of the bass at the end of the phrase there. Even here, it opens up. Just kind of add that variation through your track. It doesn't really matter when. Just make sure you add it at the right time, because you don't want to have those like mids and those highs coming in whenever you have like the synth playing here. That's why the synth will kind of be the first part of this bar there. So you'll hear kind of, I'll play this.
I just want to feel the bass. I just want to be at the disco.
So you hear kind of how I only have the filter opening outside of the synth. Like you wouldn't want to open it on here whenever you have kind of the synth playing, because you want that to be separate.
I just want to feel the bass.
Opening there. So it's at like the end of your phrases. Usually you'll just kind of base it around that. You don't want it to be opening at the same time. So yeah, I kind of had that built out, and then go with your drums and percussion after that. A lot of times for this like modern tech house percussion, you want it pretty tight because you're leaving room, like I was talking about for the other stuff in the mix. So it's just like your hats, your clap, snare, and then like rides or anything else. Usually this is, yeah, like tighter than like more reverby because that's just kind of how the genre is right now. I'll just play out my percussion. As you can tell, it's like very tight hats and kind of just driving. I have 16 hats and they're on the drop to make it sound a bit quicker because this is hat 132. You want it to be very moving. What's common for like a lot of the tech house stuff today is layering a clap and a snare on top of each other. Like I have this clap and then the snare, and then together it's like this. I feel like it sounds better together, and that's just what a lot of people are doing today. And then also, I'm sure you guys have heard it, but they have, what's really common is this reverse clap here. So like that like whipping sound, you'll hear it in a bunch of the actually like more like minimal tech stuff like Abo. To be honest, like a lot of those people have that whipping clap, and it just kind of helps you add like variation within your drums, which is like what I was talking about. Like you want variation throughout every part of your track. It's like for this, kind of like groove your hats here, added some groove on the hat loop. Yeah, have kind of fills there, some doubles, stuff like that. You really don't need anything crazy. If you're struggling to find like percussion that you feel like matches your track, just get a reference track. You should be using a reference track anyways for most of the time. But get a reference track that's the same genre and kind of the same vibe that you're going for, and like sit there, and even if you want to like get a stem separator and separate out their percussion, and just think about why they chose each sound for that. Because sound selection for your percussion for everything throughout your track is really going to be, I feel like, a lot more important than just stacking stuff. Whenever I first started producing, I feel like if something didn't sound good, I would just find more sounds to layer on top of it, and that just kind of clogs your mix up and makes it really just sound shitty. Like you want to focus on sound selection over that because it's going to be a lot easier whenever you're mixing, and it's just going to be better for you in the long run. So like I don't have a lot of drums in here. Like it's really just this ride, this open hat, a closed hat, 16ths. I have a shaker in the second drop, and then the clap and the snare. A little more groove with the shaker there, some lifts. So after you have like your percussion and all of those factors done, your track is basically has like all the pieces to the puzzle. And that's when I like to build out kind of that first drop, that first like 8 to 16 bar loop. That's going to be your first drop. So it's going to be like all of this.
I just want to feel the bass.
So yeah, that's usually what I'll do after I have all those pieces together, is build out that first, like exactly what I would picture as like the first drop. Just because that's going to be like what you kind of base your track around. And then once you have your arrangement there, you can pull everything apart and create the like intro, breakdown, and build up to the build. Once I have my full arrangement built out, that's when I'll do the last but not least, which is your like accents and effects for your track. So I would say effects for the track and like that atmosphere and all that is kind of an accent to like your main piece of the track. If you can make a track sound good with just like the arrangement without any like effects or accents or anything, it's going to sound even better whenever you add that. And I would say effects are often like overlooked. I have a lot of channels in here. I have like 15 channels of effects. So I have some atmosphere here. Some kind of breakdown noise risers. This is like reversed, build, and then obviously I'll have like vocal stutters in here, and then the snare roll, and all that. It's pretty easy to add effects, like just kind of base it off where you hear it in like the reference track or whatever reference track you're using. You don't really have to like watch out for adding too much effects. Just make sure like if you're adding rises or stuff, they're in key, and make it not too cluttered before your drop. Like you're gonna want to mix it well, but just add that to really accent everything. And that's usually when I add the extra stuff too, like the plucks. After I have the full range of built out, that's when I added this extra vocal. Have that here, and then also this one as almost a call and response to the main vocal. And then I mean you're basically done. Just build it out, make sure it sounds good, and then it's really just like mixing and mastering. I'll probably do a separate video on mixing and mastering just because that would make this video like way longer. But yeah, that's really what you need to make like a modern tech house track. So to kind of give like an overview, I like to start top down. So I start with the vocals because that's going to set the vibe for your track. Be intentional and think about, okay, what do I want to do? What's kind of the vibe I want? Pick your vocals based on that, and then you want to find kind of the unique sound or like sonic identity of the track you want to build out. So find that synth lead that really fits well with the vocal, and like you hear it and you're like, yes, like this is what I want in my track. And then after you have kind of that like sonic identity built out, that's when I usually go and I figure out my low end and my percussion. Make sure it kind of matches the genre. That's when I like really recommend using a reference track, not in the beginning, just because you kind of want to build out what you want the sonic identity of the track to be, and then figure out kind of what you want to fit around that. And just be intentional, like I was talking about. Like if you want your synths and your vocals to be really prominent and kind of like the sticking out talking point of your track, you don't want to have a lot of movement and your percussion and your bass. A lot of times for the more houseier stuff, it's gonna be the opposite. Your drums and your bass line are gonna be the talking point of it. So you'll have a lot of groove and movement, and your percussion, or maybe the bass, it's a lot more glidey, it's a lot more groovy for the bass. Your MIDI is gonna look a lot different for like a really housey bass than you would for like this kind of more modern tech house where it's focused on the synths and the drop elements like that, as opposed to like a really groovy bass line and percussion. So yeah, after you have all that built out, like I was saying, just make sure you're very intentional with each piece you're putting. After that, do the top down, and then really just make sure to tie everything together with adding the effects and the atmosphere and accenting everything. So that's when you go and make sure you have like variation in your drums, like automation with your bass line, add some like fills in there, add like maybe some like stabs with the bass. Like I was talking about, like I have the random bass accents, I have some extra vocals I use to kind of accent the main vocal. I'll have random hits, like I have these clashes here, and then yeah, just piece everything together however you want. At the end of the day, like you're not going to be able to throw together, or you're probably not, maybe you will, to throw together a bunch of random sounds and have it be musically coherent. So just think about that whenever you're writing a track. Like don't focus on making it the best track ever in terms of like music industry standard. Just start out with something you want to make, and then build it out very intentionally based on the vibe you want to put out for your track and your kind of sonic identity for your artist. But yeah, anyways, that's how to make a tech house track in 2026, or at least that's how I go about it. God, I feel like that was a rant, but thank you guys. I hope you guys liked the video, and like comment what else you want. I could definitely do some like shorter form stuff based on like going more in depth and like making exactly how I make maybe my like bass lines or drums, or like mix and master. This was kind of like a very I'm blanking right now, big idea version, is that what you say? High level version, that's what I was thinking. But anyways, yeah, let me know about other stuff like that. Was very high level. So if you guys want me to go more in depth on more specific stuff, like exactly how I make the automation for my bass, or like variation and percussion, I could definitely do that. But I hope you guys enjoy the video. Thank you. First actual YouTube video, so let's go. Peace. Subscribe.